Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining this webinar on creating employee passion for brand and for customer. It's a particular passion of mine, so I'm actually delighted to be talking about it. First, I'd like to thank Russell Cummings and Ray from SBD Business for helping set up this webinar structure. So it's thank you for allowing that to happen. Bit of an introduction about myself. My name's Jim Parry. I'm from SoBrand. SoBrand is a business advisory service helping leaders of organizations help or create a clear business and brand strategy and engage employees and create passion within the business for that brand and customer, obviously leading to great customer outcomes. So thank you for joining the webinar. I'll speak for about 30 minutes. And I'll like to talk a bit about some examples of what this looks like in business. How do we overcome barriers to achieving this? It's not an easy thing to do as soon as we start getting into this sort of cultural area. And also some principles for leaders at the end to walk away. You should have a workbook access to, if you listen to the recording and you registered to the webinar, you should still get access to that workbook. So I hope that's useful. And a webinar is also wouldn't be a webinar unless there's some light touch exercises throughout the process. So it'll help you give some thought to your own business around some of the principles and insights that I'll talk about. Okay, well, let's get started. We want to use the time well. So why is this important? Why is passion for brand and customer so important? Well, this is a quote I found and I really like it. I have no idea who made the quote, but I think it's a fantastic quote. If we don't take care of our customers, somebody else will. Well, I think often organizations believe they're delivering great customer service or superior customer service, when in fact the reality is somewhat different. And IBM have done some research in this area where some high-level data they have suggested 80% of companies believe they deliver superior customer service, but only 8% of customers say that's true. So somewhat of a gap. And actually, it's not easy to create this customer and brand-centric culture. Because not only does it require an all-in internal effort, it requires an exceptional external effort as well. But getting this right, this creation of appropriate culture for customer as well as brand can be a real game changer. According to a new Booz & Company culture and change management survey of more than 2,000 executives, managers, and employees, well over 85% of those said that culture is critical to their organization's success. And 60% see it as a bigger success factor than either their strategy or their operating model. And Deloitte Global Human Capital says that 78% of business leaders rate retention, employee retention, and engagement urgent or important. So it's clearly a big issue in business. I think it's a growing issue and one that's continually being recognized in many businesses throughout the world. So looking at some connectivity here, the things that need to be connected in order for this sequence to occur. And hopefully you'll see a screen with 5 blue circles with writing on it. And we start with customer. And really the principle is that customers have to have a great experience with your brand or product or service to return. And that's, I think we know that to create loyalty, you have to deliver consistently high levels of customer experience. But that experience has to be delivered by employees who are engaged around customer and engaged around the brand promise and the values of the organization. To have that consistently achieved, that passion has to be evident right the way through the organization. But also, those employees delivering that experience need to be operating in an effective culture, a culture that gives them permission to operate within the boundaries of the brand promise and empowering them to use their initiative around that too. And that culture really needs to be engendering creativity and progressiveness within employee set too. But critically, for that culture to be effective, we're down on the fourth circle. That culture has to be created by leaders who live the brand, and leaders who are able to understand the brand values, the sustainable competitive advantage of the organization, and also importantly the vision and the why. What kind of makes an organization tick? These leaders have to be able to articulate that and live the brand visibly to the employees, because leaders are watched all the time by employees, and this is very much a leadership task around living that brand and delivering the culture. But of course, the last kind of piece of connectivity is that brand has to be grounded in people insight. It has to be grounded in customer. It has to be grounded in employees, about that human connection for brand. Very important. So there are a number of benefits of creating this passion for brand and customer, and it kind of works. Really, I think this easily looked at sort of four quadrants. Really, we've just spoken about customer. Yes, it's about delivering a better experience so the customers reward you with loyal behavior. And of course, as we know, customers are really a proxy for dollars. So it's rewarding that loyal behavior. But when it comes to offer, it's actually being able to live and deliver a sustainable competitive advantage for your business. And, a sustainable competitive advantage is really delivering those things that your customers deem most important, and in a way that your organization feels great about delivering. You're highly capable and energized by delivering that. Operationally, and this is where sustainable competitive advantage also plays a significant role in the operations, but through that connectivity you create through customer and brand passion, you start to create an agility for customer. The organization is able to maneuver itself quickly and with effective decision makings for great customer outcomes. And also, you have clearer priorities. So if the customer and a clear set of business values and passion for that brand is clear, endemic through the organization, priority setting is much clearer. The way forward tends to be clearer for all concerned. And lastly, with staff themselves, this passion creates excitement, and when people are excited, they do great things. And it's also creates a sense of tribe, a sense of connectedness, and a sense of belonging, a personal identity with the organization and the brand. And subsequently, you get great brand ambassadors. You get people who move from this continuum of perhaps being passive employees, passive participators in the organization, to people who are proactively advocating the place that they work or the products they work on. And this also speaks to increased talent retention and talent attraction. So a toolbox. So these things are not easily created, as I keep saying, but leaders need to have access and be very familiar with, I think, some key essentials in a toolbox. And that toolbox to me is made up of a vision. So very important to understand, and I think this is fairly obvious, but a compelling vision statement about where it is you want to be at a given point in time. But also, it's not just words, it's actually lived through actions and stories and leadership behavior, actually living and articulating that vision. Values. So values are really about what you stand for, what makes your organization tick, what is your inner purpose as an organization. And it's very important for these values to be unique if you can make them, but critically, they have to be authentic. They have to be really authentic about what you stand for. And this starts to create the connection between people who work for you and you as an organization, because business is generally about people. Sustainable competitive advantage. So we mentioned this, how you will win, how you're going to win by delivering those things your customers really care about, and what makes you excited and capable as an organization. And the other piece is brand positioning. And a brand positioning for me is about this connection through the brand promise that you make with your customers. And I would argue with your employees as well. It's the emotional connection you get right. And I want to talk about a couple of these now. The first piece I want to talk about is a case study with Zappos. Now, I don't know whether many of you are familiar with Zappos. They're an American online shoe company. They were bought by Amazon. Well, they started in 1999, and 10 years later, Amazon bought them for about $1 billion. So a hugely successful organization, but incredibly transparent organization. And where I look for examples of where the internal brand of an organization and the external brand of an organization starts to come very close together and almost be as one. Zappos achieves this. Now, they're quite a distinctive organization, very American in their approach, and have a particular style. But Zappos place a huge amount of importance on customer culture. In fact, Tony Hsieh, who is the chief executive of Zappos, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner holding that ball, he quotes, he says that your culture is your brand. And I think that's so true, and that defines who you are. And a lot of other things actually follow. Tony Hsieh also says, through putting customer very much at the heart of what they do, he suggests that their organization really is a customer service business that just happens to sell shoes. So he really pushes hard on this customer culture. And culture being so important to them that they talk about how they recruit. So people coming into Zappos will be recruited on two sort of trains or two areas. One being their capability for the job, the technical capability for the job, and the other is their cultural fit. So people are really assessed around, it's a two-way process, clearly, helping people make open choices. Now, once people decide to join Zappos after a pretty intensive 4-week induction period, Tony Hsieh offers them something around $2,000 or $3,000 to leave the organization, because he wants to make sure that people are joining the organization because they feel it's the right fit for them. It's a good emotional connection with the business. And I think probably a very, very small minority of people take the money. So clearly they're getting something right. And if we look to the next slide around Zappos' core values, they've got a very interesting set of values. I mean, there are 10 of them, which is quite a lot. I think probably most of us find it easier to deal with maybe 4 or 5 value sets, but it kind of doesn't matter. The point is that the values are authentic, lived by the leaders, lived by everybody in the organization, and are real to the business and unique to the business. And things like create fun and a little weirdness, as an example, are indications of that organization's permissiveness and empowering employees to act and behave in a certain way within the boundaries of the business values. So I think really interesting set of examples of how businesses can create value sets that are quite powerful and quite authentic and unique to the organization. Another piece that I wanted to share with you was something I've kind of seen from somebody called Simon Sinek, and some of you may have heard of Simon Sinek. He's an author and presenter, and he shared this principle of what, how, why on TED Talks a few years ago, and I would highly recommend that you look at this. You just Google Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, on TED Talks, and you'll see him talk about this. But just to briefly paraphrase what he's saying, but I think I love this because it's a very simple, quite compelling way to talk about what the business purpose actually is. And so Simon Sinek talks about Apple, and he uses Apple as his example. And when we think about the what, how, why, the what of what organizations do is kind of the physical thing. So in Apple's case, they're making consumer electronic products. And that is perhaps no different to many other organizations that do the same. So not necessarily differentiating in itself. The how they go about it starts to get into some of the competitive advantage areas. And so in Apple's case, and they probably express it slightly differently, but the how is really they're innovating. They're very innovative. They're constantly innovating for customer. Their values talk about focus on innovation, focus on the priorities for customer. But I think the thing that sets them apart, really sets them apart, is that Apple's about changing the status quo. So that's their belief set, why they're in business. And why is not about simply making a profit. That's kind of an outcome, as Simon Sinek would say. But why is actually about the belief. Why do they come to work every day? Why do they exist? What's their purpose? And I think the insight here, and if you think about it for your own businesses, people tend to buy not what you do, but they buy why you do it. And I think this emotional connect around belief set is a very important piece to remember when developing organizations and developing products and services. So I think it's quite a powerful thought. And I think one can also take that principle into brand positioning. And I like to think of brand positioning around your shared value or your shared why. And a good way to structure this is to think about your organization, product, or service in a kind of logical sequence of steps, sort of laddering. And so it's really about understanding, obviously, your target consumer. You can see the top box, so your product or service is for a particular type of target audience. And that target audience wants an outcome. That's got to deliver something. So they want an outcome. And there's a functional benefit. So your product or service provides something that is a functional benefit. And it offers a particular point of differentiation, which is one of the reasons why you choose it rather than other products. But the big bit for me is what it allows you then to do. There's a higher order emotional connect between your brand, product or service, and your target audience. And again, I would argue that connect between your employees too. And then the last piece is a reason to believe. So if we look at an example where we take Nature Valley, General Mills company, a General Mills brand, producing health food bars, health food products. So we work this example through. So it's illustrative, so I don't have access to Nature Valley's detailed information, but this is pretty good as an illustration. So Nature Valley target audience is for the aspirational outdoor person. You need to look at their website to see how much that's fulfilled in a lot of their communications. And these customers want to be outside enjoying nature. And the functional benefit of the product is it provides a healthy snack. And the point of differentiation, that offers natural nutrition without any preservatives. So that's the point of difference about the product. But the connection that Nature Valley brand is making with its customers is about connecting with nature. So that's the higher order emotional connection. That's the shared belief, the shared value that Nature Valley have with their particular target audience. And it makes it a very authentic relationship. And I think employees do the same. If you go back to the Apple example about changing the status quo, I mean, that's why people queue up outside Apple stores to get the latest iPhone for customers. And that's why people want to work for Apple, because it's an organization that has a belief set in common with many people that work there. And obviously Nature Valley's long history of embracing the outdoors and outdoor sports. Again, you need to look at their communications. You'll see quite clearly that's true in terms of how they go about their business. So first exercise, I'd like you to think about, just for 1 minute, your organization's brand or product or services or particular product brand you're working on, and perhaps try and articulate what you think your shared value or your shared belief might be with your customer set and indeed people that work within your business. And I'll just flick back a slide to hold the Nature Valley example, which may help. Okay. So having thought about what the brand stands for, the why, the purpose, how that connects to your values, a lot of emotional connection. But what about employees? How do we engage employees? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit in a minute about barriers and how we overcome those barriers, but I just want to give you a couple of examples of where I've worked on or have examples of effective employee engagement. And to me, a lot of this is about harnessing creativity. How do we use the creativity within an organization to better enable that business to generate improvement in the way they operate or offer and service development? And the first thing I would contend is that everybody has a point of view. Everybody in that organization has a perspective on leadership, the organizational brand, how well things are done, their personal relationship, and a perspective on how things could be done and new ideas. So the importance here is about empowering them to do that. An example I wanted to give you was when I was working with BP a short while ago, and some years ago, in fact, a story emerged within BP whilst I was there that we had a letter from a community worker operating in the Northern Territory. And this community worker was talking about petrol sniffing being rife in some of the community, very rural, indigenous community areas that he was operating in. And he described a girl walking around outside his window with a bottle strapped to her face, inhaling petrol fumes. And he said, I don't think she's going to make her 12th birthday. Is there anything you can do? And this letter went to all fuel companies, and BP responded. And it's a great example of the whole value chain of the organization responding, from the refinery, manufacturing, supply, technology, customer service, marketing, and sales. The whole business responded, and people put in this discretionary effort to make this product that took the high away from petrol sniffing. And basically this product, in the areas that it's effectively distributed, eradicates petrol sniffing. And people put in this discretionary effort within the business because they were empowered to do so by the leadership, and because it was the right thing to do. The belief set was huge in order to make that happen. It's a real success story, and a very compelling story that actually in some ways is hidden under the wider, better known things about the BP brand. Talked about the value chain, so engaging employees, it's important to understand, well, who's involved here? I think the challenge exists that the further you are away from customer, the tougher it is perhaps to generate passion for customer and knowledge of customer, and in some cases passion for brand. So, but given this sort of perspective that people do have a point of view, you can use it to lead creative forums. So where you have structured leadership-led forums where employees can contribute to ideas and contribute to subject matter discussions and feel that they are connecting and contributing and making progress within the organization. Different companies do this. IBM, they have an internal creative forum, sequence of forums done on quite a large scale called the Jam, and this has a lot of internal credibility, and ideas that generate out of that do cascade and actually frequently end up as business propositions or indeed companies within IBM. Starbucks, just look at myideastarbucks.com and you'll see that Starbucks share openly with customers as well as staff the generational online discussions that are used to create new ideas or product or service improvement for customers. So quite a transparent activity set that Starbucks do. So quite interesting. So again, that's freely available online. I encourage you to look at it. And the other one is Planet Innovation. Planet Innovation work with organizations to improve innovation, the commercialization of innovation. And they internally have an employee ideas club called the Eureka Club. And this, again, same principle as IBM and Starbucks. But again, if employees come up with a good idea, rather than feeling that the organization then takes that idea and may or may not do something with it, they actually get to be part of that idea becoming commercialized, and in some cases create an organization out of it. So, and it's also about creating the cause. So people, employees love a cause, a purpose, and I think leaders can create momentum for customer in creating causes. And of course, effective leadership in engaging employees is around storytelling. Human beings listen to stories every day. We're great storytellers, and that's how we generally communicate with one another. But for some reason, in formal business environments, that can often be lacking. So I think bringing out stories around brand and customer folklore is a very compelling way of creating engagement, because people listen to stories and they can create pictures in their mind around storytelling, and it's a very effective influencing tool. And we used Michael Clark there for a number of different causes and rallying cries and representing the brand, and he helps us to create and tell those stories to our targeted audience as well as employees. Well, that's what we did when I was at BP. So having spoken about employees, engaging employees, it's also about passion for customer too. And I think this can be hard, like I said, as one works back through the value chain. And one simple technique of doing this is to create visible personas for customers. So that means photos of customers, short of actually dragging your real customers into the organization every day. And by the way, I think if you can bring customers in to meet the rest of the business, I would highly encourage that. But day after day, it's quite difficult to do that. So a proxy for that is to create literally photographs of customers, real customers if you can, and provide information around how they live and make purchase decisions. You then start to align your activity set, your discussions, meetings of a visual representation of that customer's in the room is quite a powerful way of making sure that customer's at the heart of your decision making and storytelling. And so if we create customer personas, like I said, real if you can. I mean, I've done standees, life-size standees that stand around the office with information on the standee around the name, the needs of this particular customer, characteristics, and so on. Really, the purpose is that this picture of a customer is representing the particular segment that you're looking after. So you may have 2 or 3 versions of each segment that you're particularly targeting. So it can be very effective. So I mentioned barriers. There are barriers. Clearly, it's not easy, and there are many. But I think some of the key ones that stick out for me are that it's change fatigue. Organizations go through change a lot, and that's just the nature of business, and that's a fact we have to live with today. The trouble is, if you're trying to change something, and often cultural change is done in very big steps, and as those of you who've had access to Mindshop tools or Mindshop advisors will know, that 70% of change initiatives fail. And one of those reasons is belief. The other one is capability and readiness for change. So three key reasons or factors underpinning successful change. But change fatigue is definitely a barrier. Inconsistency, this is managerial and leadership inconsistency around strategy articulation, brand behavior, storytelling, or articulation of strategy. Literal lack of employee engagement through lack of visibility from leaders, lack of storytelling, lack of compelling reasons to believe in the brand, and of course the tools, lack of clear vision and values. So how do we overcome those values? Well, we can start by sort of understanding, there's a nice little quote here that I put in, that children imitate their parents, employees their managers. I thought it was a lovely little quote and probably very true. So worth remembering, again, as leaders, that we are visible in our actions and our written word and our deed. So overcoming some of these barriers, I think there are 3 success factors here, 3 critical factors. 1 is obviously effective employee engagement. 2 is affecting change on a small scale, and 3 being consistent. So I'll just briefly talk a little bit about these. I've got 4 minutes left, so I need to be quick. So employee engagement around, and Tony Hsieh says some of this from Zappos, it's about perceived control, allowing employees a sense of control over what they're doing and control over their input to the business. A good example here is Richard Branson from Virgin. I read recently that he, for his UK head office business, has banned or discontinued formal holiday requests for employees. He said, it's up to you when you take a holiday, for how long you take the holiday. You just need to agree it with your peers to make sure that the people that rely on you understand and you agree collectively where you go. So it's a fantastic way to hand back control and empowerment to employees. I think it's a bit of a test for them, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but he's trying something new around building employee empowerment. Perceived progress, so people need to feel they have career progress, they're getting somewhere, and that their contribution is actually affecting the business. Connectedness, and also creating belief in the company's vision or meaning. There's some research done by an organization, I think called Akritas, a year or so ago, around professional services firms, and they found that about 30% of employees in professional services firm were thinking of leaving within the next 12 months. And one of the key reasons for that was the organization's lack of clear vision and values and strategy. So really important. Small changes. So how do you avoid change fatigue? It's making those small steps, but maintaining absolute clarity on the organizational and individual objectives. So strategy is critical, and the objectives of the business are clearly critical, but you move your change program, particularly around this cultural set and behavior change, you do it in small steps. And use those positive attributes, the things that really work well, as your foundation. So begin that way. Now, consistency, this is avoiding that kind of boomerang effect of leaders who may come and go or change strategy and direction. So we need to make sure that we avoid that boomerang effect and maintain the momentum in what's happening. This needs to be a strategic driver. It needs to be held at the highest level and used as a strategic driver of the business. Other factors like your strategy articulation come off this basis of being clear around your values and your why. And this strategic drive around the importance of connecting your employees with your brand and the importance of customer really has to be held at that highest level. So I wanted to suggest another very quick exercise where perhaps you can score your now and where you need to be across those three factors. So if we look at employee engagement, out of 10, so where would you score yourself out of 10 in terms of how well as an organization you effectively engage employees? And same for small changes, how well you move change through the business, how well you control that change and manage change fatigue. And lastly, with consistency. So the now, where you are now, and where, how important out of 10 would you believe this factor to be in achieving your future business goals? So I'm into my last minute, so I'm going to quickly conclude. So a very important tool that, again, those of you familiar with MindShop, the one-page plan, really effective way of articulating your now, where you want to go, and how your strategies you're going to use to help affect that change. This is a general strategic business example, but I encourage simplicity and focus through strategies and action plans on a one-page plan to help affect some of this behavior change that we're talking about. And so in summary, some 6 key principles for leaders: be really clear on the brand vision, positioning, your customers and the sustainable competitive advantage, your values. Second, as leaders, don't be shy, be visible and accessible to customer and staff, and live the brand. Really important that as a leader, you're able to walk the talk and be accessible and visible to your people. Empower your people, as we spoke before, access their creativity, involve them and help them deliver the brand promise to the customer. Empower them to do that. We haven't spoken about number 4, but important to understand the gaps in your customer experience and audit about where you currently exist, where the leakage is occurring, and improve and close those gaps. 5, celebrate the importance of customer and tell those stories about customer and the brand. Use storytelling as a really effective tool to engage. And 6, create visible crusades for customer, create rallying cries that employees will wrap themselves around and follow the brand and customer crusade. So very important. So thank you. I've probably run a little bit over time, so apologies, but I'm very happy to answer any questions or be accessible to anybody who wants to follow any of these insights or comments through. You can get hold of me through my website or mobile. I'm also on LinkedIn, Jim Parry, so please find me that way. Thank you very much indeed.